you really can make an impact on kids. And even in this, NIL and all this transfer and all that, you can still make a difference, whether it be 1 year or whether it be for 4 or 5 years. And especially if they get hurt, you can really make a big difference in their lives.
This week on the podcast, we're joined by my longtime friend, Jeff Carrico, who worked as a collegiate athletic trainer for over 30 years and currently serves as an outreach athletic trainer with the University of Kentucky Healthcare System. One of the cool parts about doing this podcast is being able to connect with past friends who are awesome people, really good at their jobs, and who genuinely care about the people they are serving. Jeff definitely fits the bill. We'll talk to Carrico about what got him started in the business, what has changed since he first started, and what the main ingredient is in being a successful athletic trainer.
Put my arm around a kid and be like, it's going to be okay. You're going to have surgery, but we're going to rehab you. We're going to get you back out on the court. We're going to get you back out on the field. Whereas if I sent that text to them, they may not have anybody to be right there to put their arm around them or give them a Kleenex because they're going to cry. So those little things really make a difference. And those are the things, yes, you're providing health care information, but you're showing that you care by putting your arm around them, by telling them it's going to be okay, by being that positive light for them in this very negative, dark hole right now that they are in.
This is the true story of two washed-up sports guys who chased the dream, private flights, championship rings, running sideline to sideline on per diem and adrenaline.
We gave our 20s and our 30s to the industry, pulled off miracles that were never in the job description. In return, low pay, long hours, and we still got cut from the team.
This is about what really happens behind the badge, the burnout, the bad bosses, the dream job that didn't love you back, but also the lifelong friendships, the chaos, the holy shit stories you couldn't make up. And somehow, despite everything, you'd still do parts of it all over again.
This is one for the ones who lived it, loved it, hated it, and still kind of miss it. For everyone who's ever asked, how in the hell did we survive that? We're two former sports insiders with more than 40 years of experience and more than enough scars to make fun of it all.
And just enough trauma to start a podcast instead of going to therapy.
I'm Brandon Barca.
And I'm Andy Boggs.
And this is No Longer Credentialed. We once had access, now we have opinions.
Podcast. You get it.
One rule for today's podcast, Jeff, is don't hold back on Boggs. Just
no. You brought the right person on. You brought the right person on. But no, I love me some harassing a Boggsy.
I don't know if it's like me and all my memories in sports, but it feels like a different lifetime, I'm sure.
It really does. And honestly, the last probably 5 or 7 years that I was in college athletics, all the, the cell phones and everybody doing videos and Snapchats and TikTok and all that stuff there, it sort of ruined some of the fun that we used to have that we didn't need to record out there. Thank God we didn't have that stuff back then, because we would be in probably a lot more trouble than what we normally are. Just a different world out there now, and the friends and the fun times that we used to have. I mean, I know some coaches, they don't go out in public and drink. They drink in their hotel room, and that can be fun to an extent, but not as fun as going out to all the hot spots in New Orleans. But I just was telling Boggsy, I worked with a professional team here a couple months ago, and I roomed with the sports performance coach, and he was a big guy from Brazil. And I had just met him a couple of days ago, and I had to hop a plane to Spokane, Washington with him. And he said, hey, I don't know, if you like to go out or if you like to drink, but he goes, we go down to the hotel bar and, we'd we have some drinks at night. And I said, his name was Bruno. I said, Bruno, I said, what athletic trainer have you met that doesn't freaking like to drink? And he was just like, he goes, good point. Good point. I was like, yeah, I'll join you. I'll join you. So for the next 3 nights, we were down there and having a good time. Not a wild time, but it was a good time.
So we're talking to you in January right now, and you're a basketball guy. Do you get PTSD this time of year?
I'm weird. I miss it. I miss it. I miss being at the games. I miss the travel. Just the camaraderie of being on the road. And I know, we've spent many times on long bus trips and stuff like that, but I miss just that interaction and going to see my colleagues around the league or around the United States. I miss that stuff. NCAA basketball tournament, not that I've got an opportunity to go to it a lot, but I miss that. I spent some time in the Big East. Nothing greater than going to Madison Square Gardens for the Big East tournament and smelling the sewage and seeing some rats when you're walking in that tunnel down in Madison Square Gardens is a memory that I always a good memory that I will always remember.
There's nothing that really replicates that feeling in the job field. I mean, I've been out of sports for about 5 years, and I agree with you. I miss that the most, just being in the trenches.
I mean, I just watched, I'm a basketball junkie. So I watched, Kentucky, LSU last night. I flipped over. I got to catch the overtime of Ole Miss, Georgia. I watched, Arizona State ended up being a good game last night. I mean, there's just all those, there's blowouts and stuff, but I miss those fun, exciting, times. I spent some time at Cincinnati, the crosstown shootout with Cincinnati and Xavier. There's a lot of fun things in sports. I think the money and the business aspect has taken out a lot of that fun for people. So it would be different to be still in it, but I do miss it. I do miss it.
Yeah, or the next morning after a game, you're seeing kids, even if they have a day off from everything else, from media and whatever, but you see them. Coaches don't see them. I don't see them, but you see them.
But, again, it's all part of the job. It's what you sign up to do. And some people do it to a higher level, and some people do the bare minimum.
Do you ever look back and think, how did I get through it all? The crazy hours, especially as an athletic trainer. What I always thought was always on call. There really was no downtime or off time between all the requests and needs and taking care of the student athletes and making sure the coaches were good with everything. I don't know. Sometimes I look back and I'm like, how did we do all of those things?
Right. No, I do reflect a lot on that. I'm still having a hard time, and I'm in this new gig for 2.5 years now, because I was doing that, going nonstop for 30 years. I did it nonstop. And now, I go cover events at 4 and 5 o'clock in the afternoon and don't have anything to do before that. I'm having a hard time some days finding things to do. I guess if I have any post-traumatic, it's just trying to fill my time is some days a little traumatic for me. But I know that I'm on a very short end of the spectrum, with people there. But I sound like a broken record all the time when I talk to especially young athletic trainers. I said, if you get into this for the money, you're going to be very disappointed. But I also always point out to them, and some of them get sick and tired of me saying it, if you're flipping burgers at McDonald's, you want to make more money. If you're an athletic trainer, you want to make more money. If you are a CEO of some high-priced company, you want to make more money. Everybody wants to make more money. But you choose the job, you choose the profession that you want to be in, and you have to be happy with what you do. Boggsy and I were talking just before we got on today. It really, to me, it's the people that you surround yourself with that really make the job. Now, of course, that's not going to pay your bills. I understand that. But it's really the people around you that make it fun, make it that you want to come to work every day. And I've been with some really good people, and I've been with some really jerks. And you hopefully you get more of the good people than you do. But I also think that everywhere that I've been, I call them kids because they really are kids. They always knew that I cared, and I think that that's a big thing that I still get to do some of that, but not to the extent that I used to in college.
So, Carrico, when you first got started in the business, was there anyone there to tell you about, hey, these are the things that could be really fun, these are the things that could be pitfalls for you, these things could be really hard? Did you have any of that advice?
I would say that my old head athletic trainer from Eastern Kentucky, who is a living legend still today in our national organization at Eastern Kentucky, Bobby Barton, he was very involved at Eastern Kentucky, very involved with our national organization. He was past president 2 different times. I mean, he really knew a lot of people. So he was a good mentor to really get my foot in the door and be like, hey, you need to be you have to be a people person, to be in this occupation. And, I every step of the way that I've been very blessed with having very good people around me that taught me things. Mike Braid, and Andrea, well, now Hine, and Phil Voris were the three athletic trainers that I dealt with when I was at Northern Illinois when I got my first start as a graduate assistant my first year. And then Mike ended up leaving. And then I moved into the assistant role my second year. And then, when I went to Marshall, Dr. Jose Ricard, you can't find a better mentor, a better human being than that guy, and who taught you the right way to do things, taught you hard work's going to pay off because we're going to be successful and so many people are going to be appreciative of what you do. I mean, there's still things that I think of almost on a daily basis, if not weekly basis, that Dr. Ricard taught me. And then, the physician that I dealt with when I went to Cincinnati, Ken Stevens, just a hardworking, humble guy that you could call 24/7 and he would be right there for you. So I've tried to, emulate some of those things over the years, and tried to be that person for the athletes that I dealt with. I've been very blessed over my career to have a lot of good people in my life to teach me the right way and the right way to do the job.
Yeah, it's just hard though, Carrico. I mean, when all you see is your office and your house, we've kind of talked through a lot of this stuff on our podcast. We love the job so much that other things get neglected. And no one ever told you when you were in grad school or undergrad or whatever, no one said, hey, you're gonna miss some holidays. You're gonna miss some birthdays. You're gonna miss some of this, some of that. It was just never told to me. And I'm not saying it would have changed my career trajectory. It just would have been nice if someone would have said, hey, be on the lookout for these type of things. These could be things that you'll have to encounter.
I think that I know in athletic training, we're trying to do a better job of work-life balance. Some people have taken it to the other extreme. They take time off for every single thing. But everyone makes decisions. I've never been married. I don't have any kids. That was my choice. My dad, before he died, he joked around that, I was married to my job. And some ways he wasn't wrong. So and again, not everybody is going to be like that, but I think you had to find like a happy medium. But this day and age with college athletics and the demand of college athletics and a business and the pressures, it's getting harder. It's getting harder. But now you're seeing, take any Power Five, take any SEC school. They have, an athletic trainer for every sport. Of course, football has probably 5, 6 of them in the Power Fives. Now they're hiring interns. So there might be an intern for Vandy men's and women's basketball now. So there's another certified person to sort of fill in the gaps when you need some time off. But there's little ways that we're trying to hire some younger professionals that need some more exposure before they get out into facing the lion of sports. So that's one way that we're trying to balance it out a little bit better. Not everybody's willing to help everybody out either. I've always worked on the teamwork approach, and some of that is really good, and some people are like, I'm going to cover my stuff and don't ask me to cover your stuff, which I think is bad at times, because what happens when you have an emergency and you can't be there, you're going to have to rely on somebody else. So you need to know who the soccer athletic trainer is, or you need to know who the baseball athletic trainer is, because they might have to fill in every once in a while for you. They're not calling out practice just because Jeff didn't show up.
For our audience, can you give just a brief overview of the day-to-day of what it's like to be an athletic trainer? Sometimes I don't think people understand just the wide range of duties that are involved.
I mean, it's ever changing, to tell you the God's honest truth, because you're not really on your own schedule. You're on, whatever coaching staff's your schedule is. So, you have a bad game last night, and that coach is one of those coaches that's like, oh, well, we're getting back in the gym. And, our free throw percentage was, crap last night. Well, the player's going to go in and they're going to shoot 100 free throws, and we're going to do a half an hour of shooting at 7:30, 8, and 8:30 this morning. Well, I would have been there at 7 to take care of any injuries or to treat anybody that needed treated beforehand. It's sort of hard because I think it's different for everybody. But I mean, typically most of my things, there wasn't too many coaches that wanted to practice early in the mornings who I was with. So we would practice in the afternoon. So I would get there. When I was with Boggsy at Marshall, I not only did basketball, but I also did baseball, and I helped out with golf at times. So my typical morning would be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Baseball would lift at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I was there by 5:30, 5:45. We would do lift for hour and a half, let's say. I would do some treatments on whoever needed to be treated. At that time, I was the head athletic trainer. I would try to do some office work in the morning. Paperwork is never ending. Everyone wants everything documented now, because, the Lord knows if you get sued, you got to have everything documented. So, that was always a, pain to do, but I had to help out and do that. People would come in and out in the mornings in between classes. So treatments would go on throughout the mornings, and then, afternoon practice, baseball would get going and basketball would get going. So I was taping and treating from probably anywhere from 12:30, 1 o'clock till 3:30, let's say. And then practices went on. At Marshall, our baseball field wasn't on campus. It was off campus. So you had to wait for those guys to come back from the off site. And so, some nights it would be 6:30, some nights it would be 7:30. You had a basketball game, it was 9:30, 10 o'clock. So I wish I could give you, it's not a 9 to 5 job, I can tell you that. And you're at the mercy of your coaches. We're just talking about holidays. I have practiced many of Thanksgivings, many of Easters. I can tell you two of my worst holiday meals in my career. One was when I was at Northern Illinois. We went to Ryan's Steakhouse for Thanksgiving, way back in probably 94 or 95. And then I spent a lovely Easter having peanut butter or bologna sandwiches in the dugout in Athens, Ohio at Ohio University. But I couldn't say, well, hey, I'm going to go get my Easter basket and go collect my eggs. And no, we had a baseball game going on that day. So it's a little tough to have a real life dedicated outside of it. I don't know how athletic trainers have a family and have a wife or have a husband and are successful with it, because something lags, somewhere along the lines there. You have to really have a lot of good time management, but realize that sometimes your time management, you might be doing great and someone throws a curveball at you. Somebody gets hurt the night before You're calling your orthopedic up or your primary care up, and you're like, hey, can we get you in the next morning? And we're there at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. When I was at DePaul, going through rush hour traffic in Chicago was not easy. And we used to play off campus. So that was like an hour and 15 minutes away from campus. So we'd get home from a basketball game that night, 11:30, and then I would be back up at 5:30 in the morning to get down to campus to get somebody to the clinic for a 7:30, 8 o'clock appointment. Just the way it is. I wasn't going to say, hey, carve out, 10 o'clock, because, we want to know, if they have a bad injury, we want the doctor to see them. If we can get an MRI that day, we're getting in to get, we can't wait until noon when we have practice at 3 and the coach wants to know, is this person going or not? A very demanding job. But again, you got to get into it for the right reasons.
Yeah, I mean, you're balancing a lot of different things, and I just kind of wanted to ask you the comparison of the workload of when you first started in the business to what it is now. I mean, I've mentioned this on a few podcasts that there was a couple of occasions where an athletic trainer was not staffing a summer workout and a kid got hurt. So what happened? The athletic trainer is staffing the summer workout. Or we had a recruit come in playing pickup with the guys. Guess what happens? He gets hurt. There's no athletic trainer there. So what happens now? The athletic trainer's now covering recruiting visits and things of that nature. So what was it like back then compared to what it is now as far as your coverage is concerned?
I think the big thing is just like your point there, especially during the summertime, there's no off seasons anymore for anybody. And so they're constantly going. Whereas in the, early on in my career during the summer, let's say that you get out of school in the middle of May. Now they come back maybe in the end of June, first part of July. Now you got half of them that didn't make good grades, so they're in summer session A and they're working out, and you're still going to be there. So when we thought that we had that little bit of that, you always look forward to that end of May. That was 2 weeks at the end of May. That Memorial Day weekend was like, yeah, here we come. And we just don't have that a whole lot anymore. And the same way, with the whole transfer portal, you think that you have a team and you get to know them. Well, hell, now 3/4 of the roster is going on to the next best thing of doing it there. And unfortunately, with some of the schools and I don't mean any disrespect to any of the schools that I've been at, but when you're at the mid-major or you're at the high-low major, you're not getting the cream of the crop of the kids. You're getting the kids that were troublemakers, that had bad grades, or they were injured. I don't know how many kids we recruited that had past injuries. So now you have this person that's had a bad injury. They come to your campus, even if you say, hey, this person's not going to make it. Oh, well, we're going to take a chance on it. We're going to take a chance on it. Well, you know what? That just signed Jeff up for more work. Because honestly, that person's going to need rehab. That person's going to need special attention. That person's going to, you got to get all the paperwork. Oh, what did the doctor say? How many surgeries did he have? Do you have the surgical notes? Your doctors want the surgical notes. Why, then you got to hear from the doctor. Well, why in the hell are we recruiting this person? That they're not going to play half the season. Hell, then you tell that to the coach, and the coach is like, yeah, you tell the doctor to stick in their lane and we'll stick in our lane. You had to balance all that out at times. So I think that just the hours of doing things now, it's just very demanding. They want to not only practice, but they want to do extra shooting, and they want to do, and, in the past, guys used to come in and get shots up at night, supposedly. Now it's more scheduled that, oh, we're going to do this and they're going to be there. And are you going to be around? And what happens if they, come down, they're playing one-on-one against their buddy and, during shooting and they twist their ankle and you're not there, there again. It's like, oh, why weren't you there? Well, I'm sorry, I had a meeting, I had this, I had that, and, practice is this time. So I think the summer is the big thing, and just the never ending spin the wheel, who's gonna be on the roster this year is gotten so crazy. And now these kids, hell, they're making quadruple the amount that I'm making, you know? So,
I was going to ask you about some of that. All of these guys with NIL, do they come in with their own doctors and trainers and other support staff?
I'm sure some of them do. I luckily at the level that I was at when I left college athletics, we hadn't gotten into it that much. So I'm just going on what I hear some of my other colleagues that I still talk to. But yes, I think that there's some that they get hurt and they go see your doctor that you want them to see, but then they're like, I don't know if we agree with that. We want you to send them here, or we're gonna take them someplace. Everyone wants to go to, all the big names of the world, because their next superstar is going to be. As an athletic trainer, if you don't have a relationship with that doctor's office, if that with that doctor, and if your doctor and another doctor don't agree on things, that's a tough thing. Yeah, it's a tough thing. You gotta ping pong back and forth, and that's why, you know, believe me, I've dealt with some people that I didn't care to have to deal with, but you have to, and you have to, put on that fake grin and shake hands and kiss babies and, go on with life. But it gets tougher. It gets tougher. And now, the players that have agents, and those agents are, they think that they're the medical specialist also. It is tough. And that's those types of things to me just start taking the fun out of being in athletics more and more and more and more.
I would think at the heart of the job, that's one of the most special parts of being an athletic trainer is the relationship and the trust and the care that you build with these athletes day in and day out. And as you're referring to this revolving door, I feel like that just changes a big chunk of what I would assume makes someone like you passionate about doing this job.
Very much so. And the same way even with coaches. I mean, the coaches change jobs. A lot of them are on to the next big thing. But yeah, I think that's becoming a harder and harder point. Back in the day, you used to have your one or two athletes out there that you knew were going to go to the NFL, or you knew were going to have a chance at the NBA. Now there's so many different leagues also that they can jump to and jump in. And but with the NIL stuff, and if a low major has a top player, that player is not going to be on that roster next year. They're going to be mid major or high major, somewhere along the lines. They're not going to be. So yes, as an athletic trainer, I talk about, and again, people get sick of me talking about relationships. When people ask me why I'm in my job, it's because of the relationships that I get to build with people and get to know people as not only your athlete or your coach, but just as a person. That's very important to me, and that's very important to just the overall healthcare of the job. If you don't have a good relationship with your coaching staff, or you don't have a good relationship with your student athletes, and somebody gets hurt and you don't have that good relationship, that evaluation, that rehabilitation, that mental health aspect of it are going to be very tough. But if you have a good relationship with them and something goes wrong, one, they know that you're going to care about them, and they know that they're in good hands. And I think that that's something that some people, as athletic trainers, especially younger athletic trainers, have missed the boat on. The word health care has the word care in it, and you have to show that you care. And not every athletic trainer out there's some great athletic trainers out there that really show great care to their people. But there's some that are just going to do the basics and just do the minimum and want to get a big fat salary. And to me, those aren't the real successful ones. And those aren't the ones that have good relationships.
Yeah, and I've told Bark until I'm blue in the face about this, but I think you guys and the athletes had the best relationships of anybody in the athletic department. I mean, if you get hurt, you tear an ACL, there's going to be a lot of Jeff Carrico in their life, like a lot. And I've been around some really good trainers, and it was always awesome to walk into a training room and hear music playing and trainers, people busting people's balls and just having a good time and just being yourself. Everybody was just their self. The relationships are so genuine. But I just kind of wanted to ask you, what do you think the most effective communication style is with the athletes that you worked with then and actually who you work with now?
In my opinion, the most effective is exactly what we're doing right here, talking face to face, or screen to screen, at least face to face, of doing it there. Because the computer is great. All this technology is great. Again, if you know how to use it, some of the stuff I wouldn't have a clue in knowing how to use it. But if you are having to tell somebody some bad news about an injury, would you rather hear it face to face with that person, or would you rather get a text or an email about it? I would hope that you'd want to talk to them face to face, because the biggest reason why is because, especially if you're giving bad news, and unfortunately, we have to give a lot of bad news at times. If somebody's waiting for their MRI result on a knee that you're like, yeah, I don't know if it's torn or ACL torn or not, and all of a sudden it's torn, and let's say you got meniscal damage with it, and I text you, hey, you tore your ACL. Do you know how that person's going to react? Probably not, because they're just reading that they tore their ACL. Whereas if they're in my office and we're sitting down and we're talking about the results of that, or we're in the doctor's office talking about the results, I'm going to see their facial expression right away, and I'm going to know how to react to them. And believe me, I put my arm in a very professional way. We got to say that these days too. Put my arm around the kid and be like, it's going to be okay. You're going to have surgery, but we're going to rehab you. We're going to get you back out on the court. We're going to get you back out on the field. Whereas if I sent that text to them, they may not have anybody to be right there to put their arm around them or give them a Kleenex, because they're going to cry and doing it there. So those little things really make a difference. And those are the things, yes, you're providing healthcare information, but you're showing that you care by putting your arm around them, by telling them it's going to be okay, by being that positive light for them in this very negative, dark hole right now that they are in doing it there. And we talk about, mental health has become a humongous problem. I say it's 2/3 mental and a third physical these days. Mental health, same way. I don't know how many kids I've had in my office over the years that have cried about being on a team, not liking being on a team, not liking their roommate, not liking the coach, not, their parents are forcing them to keep on playing. You name it. I'm not shooting the ball well. I'm not getting any playing time. Who do they see every day? They see this guy. If I have developed a good relationship with him, I joke around. I have so many nieces and nephews because I say Uncle Jeff's right here for you. So many nieces and nephews over the years of doing it there. Again, because I've showed that I cared about them, and I cared about them not only as an athlete, but as a person, and I want the best for them. I'll give you an example. One of my previous schools, I had a student athlete who was suicidal and had overdosed. And I was the one that got him to go counseling. The counselor on campus was like, this is bigger than what we can provide here on campus. They need to go to a in-person clinic, to be evaluated and seen. You know who the person was that took him there? And actually, ironically, it happened on my birthday. So if I would have said, "Oh, I'm taking my birthday off," I would not have been there for that student athlete. And that student athlete went, and I had to tell administration that, we were going to put this person in person therapy, and they're just like, "Oh, well, what are we supposed to do?" And the coaching staff was part of the problem. They didn't have a good relationship with them, so Shirley wasn't going to ask the coach to go take them there. Administrators, they claim they know everything about the student athletes, but they don't have the relationship that they did. So I drive that individual to this in-person therapy clinic. I'm the one that sat there while they got checked in the entire time that they went through, because they signed off that I could be present for all the questioning that they did. I saw that person sit there and cry, and they were a foreign student athlete, unfortunately. So it wasn't like you call mom and dad up and they could drive down the road and see you. But the point I'm getting is, if I didn't have that relationship, would that kid even be here today? And I'm not trying to say, oh, look at me, look at what I did. But it's that little extra that you go to take care of the kids, both physically and mentally.
That has to take somewhat of a mental toll on an athletic trainer when you're dealing with, at times, sometimes life or death situations. And we always see athletic trainers from the outside of wearing a cape. But what is that having to deal with all of these types of situations emotionally, the stress, just everything, while everyone expects you just to do this job? Are people checking on your mental welfare?
One really great thing that our national organization has done is they've developed a group called AT Cares, ironically. And it is for those types of situations. If you would possibly, there's state reps in all 50 states. And if they find out that, God forbid, one of your athletes collapses and dies on the court, or there's some kind of traumatic spinal cord injury, they call and check on you. And I think that that's a wonderful program that our national organization has developed. But yeah, it is true. It's tough because we're there and we're expected to sort of have all the medical answers as best we can. And it does get tough. It does get tough, and it does wear on you mentally. Bugsy, I can't remember. Were you there at Marshall when we lost a student athlete?
I was. It was after a basketball game.
Yes. Yeah. So, yep, every February, that date comes around, I am reminded, because I was the one. I did not find the student athlete, but their teammates did. But I was the one that called the coach. Well, we don't learn about that on a PowerPoint presentation, or we don't read about that in a book. Like, oh, hey, just call them up and say these things. No, no, and unfortunately, we had a couple instances. When I was at Marshall, we had some issues with another team, that we had a student athlete that got got a little too intoxicated and fell from a apartment building and was on the brink of death. And you talk about, oh, what's your schedule like? Well, that instance, another athlete and the team was still in season, and they were headed to Memphis, Tennessee, and I believe is the head coach stayed back, and the two assistants took the team to play in this match. And I didn't cover the sport, but I was sent just in case this student athlete passed away while we were on the road, and I would be dealing with the fallout from that. Well, I'm not a trained psychologist. I'm not a certified, psychiatric personnel. I'm just a caring athletic trainer. And so there's things that you go through and you learn about, and you learn on the run. You learn just by, I hope I'm going to do the right thing here. It's not like the CPR training where this is the count and this is what you do, and you go get the AED and you put it on and you call 911. It's not that simple. So the mental aspect has, you go back to what has changed over the years. The mental aspect has really changed over the years of what you're not only dealing with physical, you're dealing with mental health also.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I think about a lot is the relationships that these student athletes, these kids, get to have with people in the department. And they end up being really strong, genuine relationships. And I just wonder, do they value them? Do administrators value them? I mean, to me, it's just an important part of their experience that they get. But I don't think they're valued like they should be. And it kind of bothers me sometimes.
I just, I don't want this to come out on this is the Jeff Carrico ego segment here. But when I left, Eastern Kentucky was my last university that I was at. I was the director there for a little over 4 years. The night that I left, and of course I worked, 7 o'clock that morning till 5 o'clock that night. 5 o'clock on a Friday night, there was over probably 150 student athletes standing outside our Coliseum when I walked out for the final time.
Yeah, man, because you matter, dude. Like we talk about, these relationships are genuine, and they're the best relationships in the athletic department. I'm going to say it. That's just the way it is.
One of my basketball players videotaped some of it, and he sent it to one of our administrators. And her response was, yeah, he'll surely be missed. Now, again, I just bring up this story to tell you that a lot of administrators have moved on at different universities. There's not a whole lot of them on a Friday night on a college campus that have probably at least a fourth of the student athletes there waiting outside to say goodbye to you. But again, what kind of impact did they make on those student athletes? And that's something very prideful to me, that I tried to make an impact on every student. And it wasn't all just the sports that I worked. It was other sports that, I would see them and I would come to some of their games and matches and things like that. But I say that because you really can make an impact on kids. And even in this, NIL and all this transfer and all that, you can still make a difference, whether it be 1 year or whether it be for 4 or 5 years. And especially if they get hurt, you can really make a big difference in their lives. And again, that's not going to pay all your bills. So, but I tell young athletic trainers all the time, you have to pull other things out for why you got into it and why you stay in it. And that's a big one for me. That's a big one for me.
What needs to change in the industry in regards to athletic trainers? We talk about on this show all the time from a perspective of better workplace culture, more resources, better support, pay, of course. But from your perspective, for athletic trainers, what would be maybe 2 to 3 things that you'd put out there today that could make it better for the profession?
I mean, that's a great question. I would say one, just valuing the work that we do. And a lot of it is not, a lot of it's behind the scenes. And when we do get in the limelight, it's normally not a good situation. When somebody goes down on the court or somebody goes down on the field and we run out there, a lot of times it's like, oh crap. But they're like, how many people are in the stands or how many people are on the sidelines going, oh, someone went down? Oh, well, Jeff or this group of athletic trainers run out there, they're in great hands. So we're gonna be okay. We're gonna be okay with whatever it is. I think the value of athletic training, I just think that we're just sort of, everyone says the right thing. Oh yeah, you're so valuable. We couldn't do it without you, this and that. But the respect, I mean, our degree is now turned into a master's degree, which that was our own faults, because we thought, oh, we're going to bump it up to a master's degree. So we're going to get up there with the PTs and the chiropractors and the, whoever else is out there doing something. But we're really not. We've sort of shot ourselves in the foot. So now we're rushing kids through in like a 2.5 year program, whereas I came from a 4-year program, where we had more time to learn things. We had more time to do things to value. So, I think just the overall, just the value of just not talking about it, but actually showing it, is very valuable. I think that, we get into all this, oh, well, you need this piece of equipment, and you need this, and you need this certification, and you need that. No, you need a creative mind. You need a very creative mind to deal with the different situations that you have. And just the overall respect. If your athletic department is going through massive changes, and a lot of them are, and a lot of them, again, have to do with finances, unfortunately. But if you're going through and you're making some really tough decisions on what to do for the student athletes, man, I would have my athletic trainers at those meetings and really truly listening to the input of those athletic trainers. Because again, just like Boggsy said, we have some pretty good relationships with the student athletes. So we're in that dirt, on that ground level with those kids. We're hearing what's going on good and bad in their lives while they're getting treatments or they're getting taped. Believe me, you should hear some of the stories and some of the stuff that comes out of their mouths and not that you're nosing into everybody's business, but you hear a lot of things. And again, if you have a good relationship with them, they're going to share more with you. So if the kids hopefully think that you're valuable, why aren't administrators? Why aren't coaches? All these coaches are getting paid all these lucrative salaries and everything. Why aren't we taking a little bit of that money and investing it in either an athletic trainer salary or making an extra position for an athletic trainer on your staff so they don't get burnout all the time, so they can take a little bit of a vacation, so they can have a Sunday or a Monday off every once in a while if you're playing on the weekends. So, I've got to serve on some committees at universities, and Boggsy will tell you, if you ask me a question, you better be ready for my answer, because you're going to get a very honest, probably too long of an answer, but you're going to get a good answer out of me, of what my true thoughts are on it there. And some administrators don't like that. They just like yes people. And if you're not a yes person, then they don't want to hear from you. But if you're a yes person that knows that ground level and knows truly what the athletes need, you could be a very valuable member of that staff. And so I guess respect, value would be two things that I think that could be greatly improved. I think the national organization, the NCAA, could do a much better job of listening to athletic trainers, because there are some committees, in each division that athletic trainers are on, but I think that they hear it, but it goes in one ear and out the other, because there's like, oh, that's just the athletic trainers. They don't really matter. We do. We have a valuable impact on your business and what's good for your student athletes and what your student athletes really truly need, not just NIL money, but what they need. And if you get the ground level people, and sports communication, you guys were around them. You got to see a different side of some of the student athletes with interviews and being able to, get some of the introverts to be an extrovert on an interview or vice versa. Equipment managers, they're just not there just to do the laundry and put out the equipment. They have they're very valuable to, they know the inside scoop on what's going on within the team also. Administrators don't. They all sit in their little high perch and make all their lofty money and get another raise for their next job. So bring some of the athletic trainers to the table, NCAA. Bring some of the athletic trainers to the table and listen to what's truly going on in your organization and some of the things that might, and I'm not saying that athletic trainers have all the answers. By no means am I saying that. But we should have a louder voice than what we do. And I push our national organization to do a better job too, because I think that some people are like, oh well, our voice is only heard to this level. Well, no, let's keep on talking a little louder for the betterment of the student athletes, for the betterment of your program, for the betterment of your athletic department, for the betterment of your university.
Yeah. So, question for you, man. Have you ever been called by a search firm to get information on a coach? I mean, I would think we talk about this all the time. I think the athletic trainer is the first person you should call if you really want to know what the essence of these coaches are. If you want to really know who they are and how they treat their kids and how they run practices and really how they do everything. I mean, the athletic trainers are the first people on the list if it was up to me.
On the record, no. Off the record, yeah. Yeah, I'll give you my opinion about them. But no search firm has ever called me and said, "Oh, give me the 411 on this person there." But I mean, I can tell you, and we do the same thing with all this transfer stuff. I don't know how many athletic trainer, how many colleagues I've gotten calls from, or I call them and say, "Good luck, good luck." That probably comes out in a very negative way. But I've also called people on good coaches too. Like, hey, you're really striking gold with this guy. And let me tell you a few things on how to be successful with them. I'm sure sports communication, whatever you guys, are calling yourselves these days, we all talk, but those things are very valuable to us in hopefully being successful with that next person. I would even take it a step further and say, how many of us have got to sit on interviews with those coaches?
Yeah, I mean, Barca, have you ever sat in an interview with a coach?
Let me think for a second. Negative, Boggsy.
No.
In some ways, I've pushed myself onto some of the interviews, especially if you had a coach that just didn't work out. There was maybe multiple reasons why they didn't work out, one being culture. I think people like us could be very valuable. But there again, be able to answer some of the questions that I might have. I've sat on some interviews and I've had other committee members that have sat around the table with me and they have told the candidate, hey, watch out for this guy. He asks a lot of tough questions. Yeah, damn right I do, because I want to get the right fit for our student athletes to be successful at this program. We should all be asking those hard questions. We should all be asking some challenging questions for the betterment of the program. Why would we be busy like, oh, tell me what your three strengths of yours. Tell me what you would like to improve in this come on. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty here, folks.
It's just not like that way anymore, Carrico. It's like we're paying these coaches a lot of money. And we mentioned a lot on our podcast about zombie contracts. You're paying coaches $30, $40, $50 million to not coach. Don't you want to know on the front end if they fit with your athletic department so you don't have to spend that money later?
Well, and the same thing with we're hiring a search firm to hire our next basketball coach. I can understand you want to get back into that coach's information if some of them had some dark clouds in their past. I can understand you got to find that out. But we didn't have these search firms 15, 20 years ago. Why are we wasting money on the athletic director and the president? That should be your damn job. We're paying you to what are you doing? You're getting the advice from the search firm? And search firm, are you calling up the people on the ground level and finding out what the real deal is here at this university? Or are you just listening to these high priced athletic administrators who think that they got the greatest thing going because they're in charge of it? But again, is that truly the right fit for that culture? If you talk to the people on the ground level, that's where you're really getting to know a lot of things and what is needed. How many administrators, not that I wanted all of them to come down to the training room, but I quite frequently invited them to come to the athletic training room. One, to see what the hell we're doing on a daily basis, and two, just to see the interaction between the two of us. I was so lucky, my last college job that I got to work with one of my former student athletes. So when that guy brought recruits in, I could have been the top Hall of Fame person in our national organization the way he boasted about me. And he's just like, I know about this guy. I know how he treats athletes because I was one of his athletes. And he treats me right. He treated me right. And that's why he and I are together again. If I'm a parent and I'm bringing little Johnny to campus, and this coach is like, "No, geez, this guy that's working with him must be a pretty good guy. Oh, he's going to take care of my kid, the health of my kid. Oh, well, I got some confidence in this guy."
You're preaching the gospel about working in sports. I am curious on a lighter, maybe a happier note. Being an athletic trainer, is that something you always wanted to do? I always like to look back and think of just being that wide-eyed kid coming out of college and getting into the industry, and you have so much passion and so much want to and desire, and then slowly over the years, sometimes you go through that grinder and maybe that joy gets lost, but maybe just circling back to the very start, was it something you always wanted to do?
It was. I have a I have a very unique story. So I grew up in Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, and stuff. I've always been a big boy, a big husky kid. I was actually too fat to play football at our CYO league. So I became the statistician, the equipment guy, and our head coach, his sons and I went to school together. He was a fireman. So Pat Lewis, who I still credit him today, I owe my career to Pat Lewis, because he allowed me to be part of the team that, they had a certain weight limit. I was a fat kid, didn't make the limit. But he taught me how to tape two fingers together. He taught me how to properly wrap an ice bag on somebody. He taught me just little, like, for, somebody got a cut. Hey, Jeff, go over there in the medical kit there and, get this and get that and clean it up. Those were the little things. So when I went to high school, I wrestled my freshman year. I sucked. God did not give me any athletic ability. Never has, never will. I always joke around with people. There's a reason why I've been sitting at the end of the bench all my life and doing it there, because I was always that last person off the bench whenever the score was 1,000-0, and Jeff, go on in. But in high school, our athletic director actually went to the church that I grew up in. And he was just like, "Yeah, I know that you did this, for football season. I played baseball and basketball, but again, wasn't good." And he was just like, and at that time, we had an athletic trainer. They came out once a week for Friday night football. And he was just like, "Would you ever want to just sort of be our athletic trainer?" And so sophomore year in high school, I worked as a student athletic trainer. I did it my sophomore, junior, and senior year. I went to the University of Cincinnati for athletic training camp during the summer. I got a call one Sunday night, and I used to just like cut grass during the summer as my summer job and stuff. I got a call from a guy named Dino Gaudio.
I know Dino.
And he was just like, "Is this Jeff Carrico?" Yeah. Back then, he called me on the landline. "I hear that, you do some athletic training at, your high school. I was just wondering, if you'd be interested in coming and being the athletic trainer at our basketball camps at Xavier University." And at that time, that was when Pete Gillen was the head coach and Skip Prosser was there. And I said, "Yeah, that give me something to do, and I could rearrange it around my grass cutting and stuff like that." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, when's the basketball camp start?" "Well, if you could be here at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, that'd be great." And I'm like, "Oh," I had never walked foot on Xavier's campus at that time. They sure as hell didn't have the Centos Center back in the late '80s, early '90s. And I worked Pete and Skip's basketball camps all during college, during the summer. I worked that, and I worked the women's basketball camps with Mark Elan, and it was a great experience. And when I see Dino and I see Pete still today, they still remember me. And I used to go there, and people today, wouldn't be able to do that now. But I not only was I was the athletic trainer, I was the canteen guy. I refereed some basketball games. I used to keep the clock during stations. I used to pass out T-shirts. I used to do all sorts of. I look back on those times and I'm like, Jesus, how in the hell did I do that for 5 weeks straight? Some of them would be overnight camps. I'd be the dorm dad while the coaches went out on the town. But those were some of the greatest experiences that I had. And I got to meet some really good people over the years just because of that experience. So when I went to college, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I mean, there was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I'm, still plugging along 32 years later of doing it there. I wouldn't change my career. Now I would change some people in my career, but I wouldn't change my career and the people that I've been associated with. The majority of them have been very good to me, and I've tried to be very good to them. I've met good people like Boggsy. I mean, who, we haven't been together for a while, and now we're back doing a podcast. Who would have thought this 15, 20 years ago?
Yeah, it's funny you say that you were too fat to play football because Boggsy was also too fat to play football. Oh no, wait a second. That says too cat. He had too many cats. They wouldn't let him
Yeah.
outside. So,
Yeah.
but hey, speaking of Boggsy,
Yes.
since you brought him back up, I bet you probably had to babysit him a lot on the road.
He's sweating. He's sweating there
I
and there now.
I could
Yeah.
see him coming into the training room for an emergency, and it's just like a hangnail. I don't know. There got to be some stories from the road.
Oh, there's plenty of stories from the road there. He was always a bad influence on me. As you can tell, I'm more of an introvert kind of guy. But no, I enjoyed my time as a Bugsy and I were roommates on the road. We had a lot of fun together. But that's what made all of the long hours and the crappy pay and some of the people that we had to deal with all worthwhile. Those fun times, those things that we can still joke about and laugh about 20 years later, those were the fun things and the relationships that we built and that we had. Steve Cotton, still the play-by-play guy at Marshall. I still have, in fact, I had to look around here. I still have the picture, Bugsy, of the Washington Monument.
I love the Washington Monument.
We were in Washington D.C. and we all sort of had our section on the bus where we would all sit. And Cotton, I think, was right behind me. You might have been right behind Cotton, or you might have been across the aisle. And we're like driving into D.C. and Cotton is, he's a historical guru, and I'm not. As you can tell by the end of the story will really tell you. And I'm looking out the window, and he's looking out the window, and he's just like, "Oh God, man, the Washington Monument. Wow, that's really impressive." And I'm looking out. I was not looking out the side that he was looking out, and all I could see is this big ass like smokestack thing. And I'm like, and I had never been to Washington D.C., so I didn't know. And hell, I would, still when I would go there when I was in the Big East, I'd laugh every time we drove past the Washington Monument, thinking that story. But I was just like, in the back of my mind, I'm going, that sure as hell isn't very impressive as the Washington Monument. And why the hell is it on fire? I tell on myself about that. So I get a picture of Boggsy and Cotton and I at Boggsy's wedding with this picture of this smokestack as remember our times in Washington, D.C. I mean, those are the fun things that we can still laugh about. When I see Cotton, still today, we make a smart ass comment about it. Those were like really like fun times of building those types of relationships. We didn't get to fly too much, so we were on buses a lot. So we got to spend a lot of quality time with one another as the years went on. And honestly, I rewind time. People always like, oh, what was your favorite place to be at? And I enjoyed all of them. There was different aspects that I enjoyed more of and doing it there. But I was at Marshall for 10 years. So we spent a lot of time together. And it was the people that if I could rewind time, I'd go back in time and rewind it again and do it again. And I would say the same thing about my undergraduate of being there. I worked really hard, and Marshall was not easy. We didn't have a lot of resources. I love the people that I got to work with at Marshall. I keep on referring back to that word relationships, and I joke around that it will be engraved. That word's going to be engraved in my tombstone whenever I fall over. But it's so valuable. It just really truly makes a difference in your career. And hopefully it makes your career a little bit more fun and a little bit more enjoyable to do, because we all go through the rat race of life. And in college athletics, we've all been through it. It's a tough gig at times. And you don't get to see your family. You don't get to see wife, kids, so you're seeing, people like Boggsy all the time. So you better have a good relationship with them because you're going to spend a lot of time with them.
And I think too, Carrico, Bark and I have both worked outside of sports, and we talk about how lucky we are about the relationships that we made and experiences that we've had. I know a lot of people take that kind of stuff for granted. I would sometimes be in a meeting and, think about, hey, have these people experienced the kind of things that I have? But on the flip side, they have always worked 8 to 5 and made a lot of money and had time for hobbies and do all that kind of stuff. It's just kind of the juxtaposition of working in sports. You just have to balance those two things sometimes.
Yeah, I think, again, I try to do a lot of mentoring with the young folks of our profession. And again, I tell them, it's again, it's not all about the paycheck. I have so much gear through my years that, I don't hardly ever buy a pair of shoes because I have some that are probably still in boxes, from different teams that I was associated. But the travel also has been a great opportunity. I mean, not only have I got to see the United States, but I had the opportunity to go to the Caribbean on numerous occasions, which I will never say no to. I've been overseas. When I was at DePaul, we used to do a summer trip every 4 years with teams that they go over and walk in the footsteps of St. Vincent de Paul over in France. And we used to go over and play basketball. And one year we had graduate assistants that worked softball. One year the softball team went over and they went to France and they went to Amsterdam also. And we were in between rotating through a 2-year cycle of graduate assistants. And so they didn't have anybody to go with them. So I was asked to go with them. And I was like, why would you pass up a trip to go over to see Amsterdam? And all these trips, you're not spending a whole lot of money. Your flight's being taken care of. Your hotel's being taken care of. A lot of your meals are taken care of. The only thing that ain't being taken care of is this, Now I spent a lot of money doing that at times, and doing it there. But you had fun. You had those experiences. You had that interaction. I mean, when I went with the softball team, of course, I didn't have a wife to, bring with me, on the trip there. So we had a lot of the softball families, softball, volleyball. Their families always seem to be a part of the team more than some other sports. And softball, they were bringing their aunts and uncles, their moms and dads, their grandmothers, and doing it there. So I got to meet all of those people, and we went on some trip on the water, and they were lining up. They're like, hey, oh, Jeff, you want to go with us? Yeah, sure. I'll go with you. And one of the grandmothers of one of the girls, her husband had passed a couple years prior to this trip. And so she brought like her best friend with her to be a travel companion. I was always in the back of the line because I didn't have anybody to partner up with it. And this grandmother and her friend were like, Jeff, get your butt down here. You're going to be in the picture with us. And I had a picture. Hell, they had bought me a damn copy of the picture. I still have the picture probably in a file somewhere here. It was just those things. And one of the grandmothers, she had some leg problems. And this family was like, they loved every tour that you could possibly go on. Well, we were in Amsterdam and they were walking around, and I told them, I'm like, I'll sit with grandma, it doesn't make any difference, to me. And we got to, that was the summer, the next spring at the conference tournament. I was covering the conference tournament. The grandmother brings me a card with a gift card in it for sitting around with her one afternoon, just shooting the shit with her while her family went and toured places. Again, built that relationship on that road trip. She remembered me almost a year later and wanted to give me a card and a gift card for sitting there talking to her for a couple hours. Those are the fun things that I also joke around with people that, I've been very blessed to deal with a lot of people, throughout the years. When I get into like ruts of like, oh, do I really want to stay in this? Do I really want to do this? I have what I call the Jeff Carrico feel good file. And it's different notes and cards that people have given me over the years. I pull out every once in a while if I'm feeling like, oh, I don't make a difference anymore. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to read this letter. And it's almost like a little pump me up. Like, nope, you keep on going because you've made a difference in, these people's lives here. I don't want to say that to be like, oh, again, look at me, but everyone's in it for different reasons. And those cards, those letters, those pictures are validation that I have made a difference in somebody's life in college athletics. And I would hope that all of us in positions like that would want to do that for the student athletes.
Time to wrap it up.
And that's another edition of No Longer Credentialed. Thanks to all of you listening, and if you like it, tell a friend and give it a 5-star rating on your podcast app of choice. Don't forget to check us out on social media at NLC Pod on X, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We'd love to hear from you. Until next week, keep grinding.